Hello there and welcome back. We are going to build up some color on this canvas. Remember that we applied our blue and created a nice watercolor mop brush effect on here. So what I've done is I've put down some high flow acrylics on here. This is an ultramarine and this is a phthalo blue-green shade. I'm going to use a little bit of my glaze on my palette, although you really don't need much glaze when you're using a high flow because that's already got quite a washy effect to it. But I'm going to go ahead and put that down. A little bit of mist on my canvas, just a little, kind of wipe the water. Paint that. That's going to give me a good base to start. So it's not going to grab the dry paint anywhere when you have the moisture on your canvas like that. So my phthalo is this color right here, and you will recognize that as sort of a blue-green color. Laying that down with just a flat brush. Picking up a little bit of my ultramarine down here. And I just want to lay the color down at this point. So then I'm taking my mop brush, a dry, high-quality mop brush. I'm going to start at the top. If you start down here, you're going to bring a lot of color up if you want to do that. If you want to keep it light, start in your lightest area, blend that, and then kind of work down. This is going to give you that pretty sort of watercolor effect to your painting. If that is something that you're interested in, even if you're just building a background that you want a very washy look, and then you're going to go in and you can apply texture over this, you can apply an impasto over this, you can apply, a thicker layer of paint, a stencil over this, you can do various things. But this is going to give you a very pretty washy background. And of course, if you want something very light, then you would just use a tiny bit of the paint with more glaze. But I wanted a little bit more of a saturated, so I used more paint and a little bit of glaze. Unfortunately, these brushes shed quite a bit, so you have to kind of pick those hairs out while it's wet and then go back in. Now, when you're working with a mop brush or anything like you're blending, this isn't quite done, but this is getting wet. So now what it's doing is just moving color around. So what I want to do is come in with another mop brush. That's one of the things of working with this technique. So you need a few dry brushes to be able to complete it properly. I'm using this so lightly, I'm barely even touching the canvas, and I'm just going in small circular motions, moving this around. Blending these colors. I don't want them completely blended into one color. I want the variations. So doing it like this kind of helps that. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to let it dry, and then we'll come in. I probably will add another coat just to build up a pretty translucency. Before I go ahead, I'm going to add, I think, some surface texture to this. So you can see this is giving me a very pretty washy watercolor effect, and we're building up all the colors from underneath, from that first blue layer. Hello there, welcome back. We are working on our watercolor effect painting with acrylics. Going to go ahead and put on another layer. This is good and dry. I want to make sure it gets good and dry between layers, especially when you're working with glazes. Working with glazes requires a full cure. So I always let my glazed layers dry at least 24 hours, more if I have the time. So I generally don't come back in 2 hours and apply another layer with glazes. I will let it dry for at least 10 to 24 hours minimum, and I suggest that. Now on my palette, I've put down just a little gloss glaze. This is a little bit of sort of a cobalt minty green and a phthalo blue. That's a blue-green shade. I'm gonna go ahead and mist my palette a little bit, get those paints just a little bit damp. I've got a damp flat brush that I'm using here. I'm gonna go ahead, take some of my glaze, move it around, add a little bit of the blue. Sometimes I just put a little bit down because I'm not sure really the color saturation that I want. If I know what I'm doing, I'll put more down the first time. This is just a little, it's a small painting for one thing. I don't need a lot. And number two, I'm kind of just working on developing these tones. So again, I'm laying it down with my flat brush. This is a glaze layer of gloss and phthalo blue only. A little bit of water. If you want to add water to your painting and you don't want to mist your painting if you're not sure it's fully cured, go ahead and add a little on your palette here and pick it up that way. A little bit of the green and blue mix, just to add a little dimension in there on the bottom. A little more blue. Now if you like the brush strokes, you can leave those, but I'm going to go through and actually do a little more blending on this. And I want a graduated color, so when it comes up here it's lighter with a little more depth at the bottom there. I'm going to go ahead and just put a little more of the blue down on the bottom. And we're going to take our mop brush and do our same blending. I'm going to start with this one. It's a little shaggier. I like to do this with my mop brush and all my brushes before I use them. Make sure they're fully flared out after washing and drying, and remove any dry hairs and bristles that you know, are going to fall out. You don't want them in your painting, so if you can sort of get them out ahead of time, it's a good idea. Very lightly coming through with the circular motion and blending this upward. This is giving me a pretty translucency effect by laying down these various layers and colors with glaze, and then going ahead with my mop brush and blending. It's giving me that really pretty soft, washy, almost watercolor effect. Okay, so I've got quite a bit blended there. Once your mop brush starts getting wet from blending, you have to let it go and get a new one, because otherwise it won't blend anymore. It'll just start moving the paint around and making mud. And so you'll have to come in with a dry brush to continue just getting that soft blend. And you may have to do this depending on the size of your painting and the layers of blending. You may need several mop brushes. I've purchased several over the years. I used to purchase them inexpensively because I would go through so many with this blending. I thought, oh, I'll just buy the cheap ones and use those. And it is not worth buying a cheap mop brush. I will tell you that right now. See, right now I'm starting to just get a move around. So I'm going to move my brush to the side, get a couple more strokes out of it because it's dry on the side. But again, don't buy a cheap mop brush. It will shed hairs very easily. And for some reason, I find they shed hairs more than the other brushes. And so it's worth it to get a good quality mop brush. Buy 2 or 3. Keep them on hand if you're going to do some of these watercolory blending. Keep them dry. Keep them very clean. And always flare them out before you use them, like I did. That will help remove some of the hairs before they drop into your paintings. There are ways that you can remove hair from your painting. See, right now I'm getting strokes versus a blend. So that's when I know my brush is wet and I need to move on. Bringing some of that color up here real softly. And that is the next layer that we have here. I do like some of the brush strokes and some of the looks, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that. And then I'm going to finish off this top here. Hello and welcome back to our watercolor effect with acrylics. This has dried quite well. I don't know if you're reading all the different layers there on camera, but there are various different blues, greens, and layers coming through this with the gloss or the glaze mixtures with the paints and our mop brush that we've done. So this has dried quite well. I'm going to be okay with misting this a bit. Only mist your canvas if you know your paints have dried for several days. Otherwise, misting will create some water spots that eat into your not fully cured acrylics. So be very careful about that. I'm picking up a little bit of a phthalo turquoise on my mop. And I'm just going to bring that in as just a little bit of depth in a couple of spots. I've got a little more phthalo blue where I can come in and swirl that through on top. Touch of green, just for some delineation of color. And again, I'm just kind of using this in a very light manner. I did not mix the phthalo with glaze. This is a high flow, so I'm using it straight on. If this was a heavy body, a medium weight, even possibly a fluid, I would mix that with glaze to get that light translucency. But I find the high flows, and if you're not familiar, this is what a high flow is right here. It says right on there, high flow acrylics. These are like water, really like a light, an incredibly light but highly pigmented paint, and they're lovely for creating these types of looks. So I've brought that all the way up. Again, I'm getting some movement here at the top, if you can see that with my brush. Now what you can do is you can go ahead and apply a little bit of white if you're doing this same look with a dry mop. Do not use the one you had, it has color on it. A new dry mop, always flare it out. If you've watched my brush tutorial, to get rid of any dry loose hairs in there. And then you can go ahead and swirl this around. It's of course white, but we're going to bring that down into the blue and mix those ever so gently. So you can see how that gives you that beautiful watercolor effect where the two colors meet. You just want to use a little, because if you use too much, then you'll get, just kind of a lot of white there, and you don't want that. You want a very ethereal look. Watercolors give a very ethereal look, and that is what you can get by applying that. If you need a little bit more, I probably would add just a little more right here. Just see, I like the way that looks. That's me, of course you do your own thing. So just kind of back and forth. You can have impasto, you can leave those brush strokes. You can blend them in for that very ethereal sort of blended look. And that is how you kind of can use acrylics to create a watercolor effect. That's one way. There are a couple other ways, but this is one such method that works well for me. And I like to blend that right down. If I need to cover anything, I go over it with my brush that has the color on it. Again, we're working with very light strokes, very, very little bit of color on our brush. We're not putting down heavy duty paint. And that is probably going to be a finished looking painting. Now you can come over this and you can put a stencil on top of this. You can do some other things with this if you wanted to create more of a complex painting, but this is your basic sort of watercolor background, and I think it's really pretty in person. I'll take some photo shots and post those so you can see what it looks like.